I know that you're excited about this session, and the person I'm going to introduce to you, I first heard about many, many, many years ago. Kind of dates me and dates him. But I told you I was involved in running Tony Robbins' company, and one of the things Tony did was he would always seek out the best and the brightest in every area because he believed in modeling. He believed that if you could find the very, very best, you could figure out what they do and you could do it. And you guys are going to have that opportunity today. So through Tony, I met this person, I don't even know how many years ago. And then when I was running part of and conducting and teaching part of Tony's Master University, I introduced this person several years ago. And I got to tell you, he looks even better and younger and fitter and nicer now than he did back then. No, he's always nice. But this guy's a legend, and I know you've all been excited that he's coming here, and you've heard all these great stories, and you know that Rich looks up to him, and he's a mentor to Rich. And I asked him, what is he going to talk about? Is there any key theme? And what he said was that he's just going to focus on you. And so what you're going to get is you're going to get an incredibly valuable hour and a half of his time of just working with you and focusing on you and giving you what you need. So please welcome the incredible marketing genius, Mr. Jay Abraham. Let's hear it for him.
Okay, so I've been around doing this so darn long that I decided today I'm not going to give you a theoretical or an ideological or a philosophical presentation because you're probably going to have more of those yesterday, the day before, and today. What I'm going to do for an hour and a half is offer to specifically, personally address your biggest marketing problem, issue, challenge, or opportunity relative to my skill set. And just so we're clear, even though this is highly, highly prejudiced towards online marketing, I don't purport to be an online marketer. However, that stated, I've had the good fortune of impacting a ton of online marketers because general marketing principles are pretty universal. So what I'd like to offer to do, if you wish to avail yourself, is a hybrid. I'd like to give you each a chance. I'll tell you what I'd like to do, because it probably would have the greatest value. I would probably like to give each of you the chance to go around your table and discuss what the most universally valuable question or issue or problem you could pose to me for the whole group, as opposed to just self-servingly, would be, because there's a lot more leverage in it, and pick one, and then we'll try to get as many, we'll randomly have runners go up and down the tables to each table and make one of you like the chairman. If you want to do that, I think that would have more value to you. You want to do that? Okay, so why don't I give you just 5 minutes max, just fine, and keep in mind, online blogs, all that stuff, that's not what I do. Building businesses, growing your profits, giving you preemption, giving you preemptiveness, giving you preeminence. I can do that all day long. So ask me questions where I can play to my strong suits, because if you ask me ones about technological things, I don't even turn my computer on, okay? All right, take 5 minutes, go around the table. Again, the key to this is a question that the answer will have the most value for everybody, not just for one person, okay? Okay, go ahead. Okay, stop, choose one question, and then runners, where are you with mics? Here's what I want to do. I want to be very equitable, so like take one from the back, then go to the front, then go to the middle, and try to be so fair that if we don't get everybody, we at least are balanced. And when we come to the table, here's what you do. Whoever's that chairperson stands up and poses the question with as greater clarity and significance so I can grasp it quickly, because the longer I'll need to calibrate and understand, the less time I'll have. It may be just a quick answer. It may be a probative question. If it gets deeper, then you'll have to pass the mic to the person who maybe initiated it. So you start, pick somebody. After he picks one, then you, and maybe you start like that and go like that, then go like that, then go like that, or something. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Yeah, how do I integrate what?
Online marketing and offline marketing. When you have an offline presence, but you don't exist online.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a cool question. I'm gonna give you my best reasoned answer, and there's a lot of nuances to it. The question is your presence offline, local, regional, national, international? Do you want online to be an expansion or just a support? I think first thing is strategically, you got to get clear on what your goal is and why, and whether you can use your current offline as a leverage, sort of a springboard to get you to a more expansive presence. You can't do, I mean, the biggest problem with most people in business, entrepreneurially, and I'm expecting and suspecting that the vast majority of you are going to be, you know, startup to small business, small medium. It means, you know, 0 to maybe 20, 30 million dollars. Most small business people don't achieve much of anything because they don't have goals. The goals are not reverse engineered. The goals are not done with the end in mind. So you got to start in saying, what in the heck am I trying to accomplish? Because if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, integration is sort of it's a joke. So, okay, let's take some scenarios. So I want to support my localized offline business. Well, that's one online integration. Well, I want to use my offline business because, like the gentleman that's the wine person, even if I have a very good clientele in Poughkeepsie, I could do this all over the country or the world. So that's a whole different strategy. First thing is figure your strategy. Then, if the strategy you've settled on has you transcending the scope of where you've been in the past. Let's say you've been hypothetically a localized merchant or retailer or service provider, but now you figured a way, you know, through the internet or through operatives all over the country or the world that you could be intergalactic. Well, first thing you have to do, and it's part of what we're teaching, this thing we're doing tomorrow, you got to believe. It really is. It is belief system. You got to see yourself deservingly capable of manifesting and realizing that. Then you got to realize before you go forward. I always try to preemptively think about all the problems. I learned early in my career, I was a problem solver. I had to figure out what I'll call forks in the road. Every time I looked at a scenario, I thought, okay, if it goes this way, what happens? If it doesn't, what happens? If it goes this way, what are the new forks, the new forks? I always try to get people to think before they even pull the trigger on anything, what are all the negatives? What are all the issues? What are all the problems? What are all the difficulties? What are all the differences that I haven't really dealt with before, so that you can integrate those before you sort of just jump in with both feet and your finger on your nose? Does that help a little bit? Okay, all right. I mean, I can get deeper on everything, but I want to be balanced. So there's a partial answer. But the point is, once you're clear on your strategic goals, once you've identified all of the real issues you've got to address, compensate, preempt, or nullify, then you figure out the highest and best way to impact the market in a distinctive manner. And that's like, as we were building out this thing for this the program we're doing, we realized that, you know, you got to figure out who already has access to that market, what their dominant mechanism of impact and reach is, whether you think you've got the wherewithal to be superior, whether you're better zagging when they zig. And there's not a one answer fits all. Does that make sense? Okay, why don't you go over here now and find somebody. Yeah, you just go down to the corner. You go down to the corner, all the way in the end. Thank you. Okay, it didn't make sense, but okay. How is it that I point there and somebody stands here? Very weird. Hi. I can't hear you at all. You just walk up here. It might be easier. I'll just reiterate it for everybody.
Hello. Okay. My name is Alex. We want to know how can we identify the leverage points in a business? I mean, we know the power of the leverage points in each business, but how can you identify them? Or what is the best way to identify them?
Whoa. Now, how do I identify? It's not you, it's the reverberation of the mic. How do I identify the leverage points in what?
In a business.
In any business? Oh, gosh. In any business?
In a business process?
Yeah, okay, sure. Okay, well, let's take a look at a business process. It's a very amorphous sort of a question, but
We'll get it going in a minute.
I'm not used to this. Bad mic. Okay, so you got a business. In a business, there's usually 10 to 40 key leverage points. It differs certainly amongst one business to the other, but you start by identifying the revenue generating process that is driving the business right now. And you can look at leverage points in terms of income generation, in terms of higher productivity, in terms of higher qualitativeness. There's lots of different factors, but let's take my side first, because you can look at operation and other sides, but I'm not expert in that. So the first thing you do is you take your business and you lay it out. And you break out all the processes that integrate together. The gentleman talked about integration, that integrate together to drive the revenue process. So whether you're online or offline, let's say you're offline and online. So if you're offline, let's say you have a retail facility. The retail facility runs ads. It has yellow pages. It draws from the shopping area, the facility, whether it's a strip mall or whatever. Maybe you do direct mail. You have a mailing list, and maybe you have an email list, even though you're an offline business. If you have an online presence, you bring people in, and that's the classic marketing 101 online is you bring I'll call them a lead. You bring somebody who becomes a devotee. You send them something, a report or a email. They start a dialogue. Maybe you have an initial purchase that's either nominal or whatever, and you want to migrate them along. So you lay out all the different progressive areas, and then the next thing you do is you try the best you can to measure and quantify how they're doing on some criteria that makes sense to you. And again, that one size doesn't fit all. It can be just pure percentage. I do this and I get 2%, and I get the 2%, I convert 4%, and the 4%, the average order is, $22. On the $22, I get 4 more purchases a year, and the average is this. But you got to start by, and I think it was Deming who said that something about measurability and predictability go alike. You got to know where you are. You got to quantify everything. Then you got to look at how much better. But most people, I'm talking in a little broken side. I and Rich and I have something in common. We're both poster boys for adult attention deficit, and so I'll shift a little bit, but I'll try to stay on point. One of the things most people in business fail to do is really understand how everything integrates, and they all want to go outside. They want more traffic. They want more access to other people's business. I always start with where you are. There's 2 philosophies in business growth. I don't care if it's on or offline. The first is to maximize what you're already doing. It's the safest and the smartest and the most leverageable to start with, because you already have what I'll call critical mass and velocity and motion. You got stuff going on. So the first thing to do is make whatever's happening better, even if it's lame and it's not the best thing you could or should be doing. It's what brought you to the party so far. It's, if your business is reasonably viable and making a living, it's what's supporting you. Make it as strong as you can, so you've got the time and the capability to identify, experiment, breakthroughs. So, for example, in the retail scenario, let's say that you get so much traffic every day or month. If you don't know what it is, you got to measure it. Then you got to look at what the average sale is. Then you got to look at what people are saying. I mean, I've tested so many things, and it's, we've tested everything from the signage outside a store, and we've been able to double or triple people walking in. We've tested the way people are greeted when they walk in the door. We've been able to triple. This is all the same traffic, the same dollar, same cents. We've tested different methods at the point of sale and been able to increase 2 or 3 times. We've tested pre-programming people with an expectation for a sequence of follow-up activities, efforts, phone call visits, letters, emails, whatever it's going to do. and been able to increase. But you can't do any of that until you know how you're doing on or offline. Does that make sense? Does that help a little bit? Again, I wish I could go, and I'm not trying to titillate or tease you. I could get, 4 hours on any one of these, and it wouldn't be a disservice, but I'm trying to get you some balanced perspective. So is that adequate for all of you? Does that at least get you started? So what you want to do is, first thing, maximize what you're already doing. Can't do that until you first know what you're already doing. Can't know what you're already doing until you take the whole process and break it into the processes, sub-processes. Those are leverage points. The beauty of marketing, whether it's on, offline, or an integration of both, is that it's the last bastion of incredible leverage. We were talking, and we've integrated it into our seminar theme for tomorrow, but one of my very good friends is Stephen Covey's son, Stephen M.R. Covey, and he's got a new book out called Leading at the Speed of Trust. And and I've dealt my whole life in leverage, upside leverage. There's two kinds of leverage in life. There's the kind that if it goes like nothing down, real estate, if it all works and everything happens and the market grows and your cash flow increases, you're fine. Anything goes wrong, you lose your ass. Then there's marketing leverage, where you can make the same effort, the same dollars, the same people, the same opportunity cost, the same marketplace, the same access vehicle, produce 2, 3, 4, 5 times yield. And if you have 20 or 30 leverage points, and you can get each one of those improving 20%, 30%, 10%, the aggregate impact is hundreds or thousands of percent. And you all have that leverage in whatever you're doing. And those of you who are just starting up, you got that same leverage in whatever you're going to do. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, next. So, back here, yeah, back here. I'm pointing here, so if somebody stands up there, I'm not going to acknowledge you.
All right, Jay, my name is Sean Powell, and the group here has come up with this question for you. And the question is, when is the right time to approach the maven in your industry, and what approach would you use to contact them?
That's a pretty fragmented statement, Sean. What are you trying to approach him for? Get his picture, say hi, get a date with his daughter? I mean, give me a little bit more context. What's the outcome you want?
Okay, sure. In the context of a JV partnership.
Okay, it's a little different. Okay, well, what I always, when I was starting out, I had a belief system, and I still believe it. You have a moral obligation not to use anybody of importance as your guinea pig, unless they do it knowingly, and I'll give you a scenario and a caveat for that. I always believe you have an obligation and responsibility to first identify why somebody would, everyone tries, there's a concept of making irresistible offers. That's pretty evident in on or offline marketing, right? And yet almost everybody in life and business and matrimony and romance, whether they're trying to get a job or trying to get laid or whatever, they make resistible offers. And so the first thing is figure out what's going to be irresistible. If you came to me with a proposition, I would adhere to the same standard that we've always adhered to in people we go to. The first thing we do is we find a way to test and validate it at our own expense, internally or buying somebody's list, a little one. So we have a reference model, so I'm not asking you to be a test mechanism. Then we basically extrapolate based on the test what it could produce for that maven based upon his or her list being not spectacular, but just being consistent to the one we tested it in, or the 2 or 3 we tested it in. Then we try to identify before we go all of the reasons they would be unwilling to do it. If it's a real maven, they probably got more opportunities presented to them than a bus stop has buses coming in the course of a month. So you got to figure out the first things is certainty it'll work, certainty they're going to get paid, certainty they're not going to have any problem, certainty they're going to get the right reporting. Then you got to basically be able to counter the fact that they've got lots of other offers. If the maven is somebody extremely desirable, and having him or her sanction and work with you would open the door for lots more, you might give them the lion's share or even all of the profit because you have a better strategic game you're playing. You're not really doing it just to do a promotion with a Jay Abraham or a Rich Sheffrin. You're doing it because if Jay Abraham sanctions it, you can go to the whole world and say, hey, they did it, and everybody else will take the deal at fair profit splits. There's a lot of different, again, I'm sorry I can't give you one size fits all. I'm not an avid believer. I mean, one of the reasons I have lots of different methodologies, principles, concepts, stratagems is because you got to create a hybrid that works for you, because we're all not a size 12 perfect whatever. But when I've done deals, and I've been very fortunate, again, I'm not an online marketer, but we did like $20 million online in the last 18 or 19 months with joint ventures. I go and I test it. Then I go to people, and before I ever ask them to do it, I submit to them the proof, I extrapolate, I give them all the marketing pieces so they can see it, I show them why the website's great, I show them this. If it's a recorded teleconference, I give them the transcript, I show them the 3 or 4 other ones I've tested so they know that I put effort into it. When I was starting out, I had to show credibility in the beginning. If you're, I mean, I'm not belittling you, but you're a little person, even if you're a big fish in your own pond, if you're not known, you might get some other people to credentialize you, some influential people that you know in other realms that would give you either letters of testimonial or call. When I was getting my first book published, I had all this stature in my industry, but nobody knew me in the publishing field. And the guy who wanted to give me a contract, it was a very lucrative, high 6-figure contract, said, well, how do I know you're real? And I said, great question. Nobody else asked me that in the interviews. And I went back to my room, and I had Tony Robbins, I had Sam George's, Tom knows him from Tony Robbins, a president, call. I had the co-founder of Federal Express call. Fran Tarkenton called. 10 people called and left a message on this guy's phone that I was the real thing, and we got the book deal. But the point is, it's not just like, hey, Maven, you want to do a deal for me? Keep in mind also, the big fallacy, and it's been true since I first burst on the scene 30 years ago, most people have everything asked backwards. When you go to a Maven, you can't say, will you do this for me? You got to say, I've got an offer that is unique and more valuable to your marketplace, to your readers, to your members, to your buyers than about anything else. Not everything else, than about anything else. Here's the 7 reasons why. And then if the Maven is really a king linchpin to your long-term strategy, maybe you shamelessly but ethically bribe him or her and you say, here's the deal. You do this promotion. If it only does this, you can have all the money. If it does that, you can have 3/4. If it does that, I want some of it, but I'll give you, if you'll go first of all, I got to prove that it works. I'll give you an override of everybody else that takes it on after you for the next 6 months. There's lots of ways to do it. Does that help? Yes? Okay, now be balanced, because I mean, I want you guys to use good runner mic judgment. Be balanced throughout the table so that everyone's not mad at me at the end.
Hi, Jay. It's Gary Spira.
Gary, how are you?
How you doing, man?
Long time.
You look great. You look great.
I try. I was telling someone, you know the book, The Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde?
Yeah.
I feel like the portrait of Dorian Gray. Don't look bad, but inside I hurt.
You look the same from years ago.
You know, it's right. I've preserved in formaldehyde. When I'm done, I go sit in the jar.
Okay. The question people have is how to create a USP, what the process you would go through.
Now, I'm going to be rudely cooperative. Of all the things I've taught, and I taught USP, and I'll tell you a book that you all should read. It's very esoteric. It's called Reality in Advertising by Rosser Reeves, R-O-E-S-S-E-R Reeves, R-E-E-V-E-S, former president of J. Walter Thompson or Leo Burnett or something. He was the man who in the 50s really discovered, refined, and articulated the concept of USP. Of all the things I can teach, most of them are relatively easy to grasp. I can give you a fragmented 3-4 minute answer. You grasp it. Maybe it's not complete, but you can run with it. USP is a very deep and difficult concept, not just to grasp, but to perfect. I cannot and I will not try to answer it in 5 minutes, but I will give you some exercises to help you answer it for yourself. First exercise, think in your life, both as a consumer, as a husband, father, mother, as an employee, or as a business owner. Business, job, career, also in any other extracurricular activity, sports, church, political groups that you're in. What resources you turn to in terms of providers of services, products that you trust implicitly. And then when you can identify them, write their name down. And then try very, very ardently to work deeper and say, what is it that they represent that other people don't? And how do I see them? And it'll give you some ideas there. Then start looking at as many fields as you can and interviewing all your friends, all your neighbors, your co-workers who are involved in anything, hobby, and ask them who the leading source they turn to is, and if they got any of the marketing, have them bring it to you, and start analyzing what it is about them. Now you got to realize USP is a very challenging concept. In its purest superficial sense, you want to basically telegraph the most unique preemptive benefit that you possibly can to the target audience that's so self-serving that he or she it's irresistible. We have evolved it to now we call it, you don't want to be just a unique selling proposition, you want to be seen as the only viable solution to a problem or an objective, a goal or an opportunity that you alone understand empathically and you alone can verbalize at a clear, more dimensional level than even they can themselves, even though they feel it. But it gets a little bit tricky from a strategic standpoint. You got to, if you really want to come up with a USP that's going to give you leverage, distinction, advantage, wealth, you got to understand what the marketplace already is getting and whether or not you can dramatically improve on that, or whether you got, as I said, zig or zag and go from a different point. When I started, my USP, as if I can remember, it was, I find overlooked assets, hidden opportunities, underperforming activities, undervalued relationships, turn them into windfall profits, and convert them to steady, ongoing revenue streams, all without any risk or cost to you. It's a pretty good proposition. Then I trained the better part of everybody online and offline who's a marketing consultant, and they started marginalizing that. And so you got to keep changing your premise. Does that help a little bit? Again, I wish I could say, do this. I refuse to be like most people because I don't believe one superficial answer is right. Bob, I thought you were leaving. You said you were leaving. Soon? Oh, do you like this? Am I answering questions well? How many years do we go? Like 20? Long time. 15? Long time. Okay, next question. I'm not looking at this one. It's time to stop. Somebody come with a hook and pull me off.
JR, since one of the major strategies that every business is going to use to leverage themselves is going to be joint ventures, could you give us 3 or 4 process-oriented steps that we should follow to create a joint venture?
Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, next question. Yes, I can. Next question.
What are they?
Oh, okay. Well, let's take a look at, and I've done joint ventures to the tune of $3 billion in 400 industries. So, again, let me start with a couple of scenarios. First thing you have to do is figure out who already has access and trust and a communication channel that is reasonably direct and accessible to the market you want to reach. And then you got to start with it. We have templates and matrix that we've created just because I've refined it. But it can start by who, what else do they buy before, during, and after the time they would buy your product or service? What other alternative means do they have that they might pursue besides your generic type of product and service? What other known constants are true about them. Maybe they're a member of a certain group or profession. What other commonalities do they have? And you make a list of all these things because, like when I got started well, I'll start. When I started doing client work, my first clients were in the gold, silver investment market. The first thing I did was figure out who owned people who wanted to be investors. Duh. Newsletters, seminar companies, people who wrote books and sold them, direct mail, like mail order. Then I said, who else has influence is not exactly as direct. And then there were authors, there were columnists, there were, there were heads of, former heads of political parties. And I started working many different stratums at the same time. I went to all the newsletters, and I went to them, and I figured out what would make them more money than they were making on their regular business. I showed them in this scenario that the newsletters they were so passionate about were making them a couple $100,000 a year because it was a very marginal business but a labor of love. But by making my clients their back end and letting me turnkey orchestrate regular, sequential, systematic communication to their lists, this is before emails, when you did direct mail, I could make millions of dollars, and I did, and I was very persuasive because I always had their best interest at mind. You got to always be external and be looking at them. If you're self-serving, it won't work. When I couldn't make joint ventures with all of those, I would find an influence that was sitting sort of dangling with no allegiance, and I would get them. One time, for example, when we were going to the outside market, we got Fran Tarkenton to sign a letter because he was known back then. One time we got Scott DeGarmo, the former publisher of Success. And even though nobody knew Scott DeGarmo, they knew his distinction. So the first thing is to find organizations that where not just the company, but a personage within the company. Jay Abraham of Abraham Group, or Rich Schefrin of Strategic Profits, or Bill Gates of Microsoft will sign a letter or do an interview or do something that through implication and through association credentializes you. When you do strategic alliances, the first thing you have to realize is almost nobody is sitting anxiously waiting for your call or your email. I don't do most of them with emails. I do most of mine with letters followed up by calls, and I'll send them FedEx, or I might even send them with I might pay $100 to have my propositions delivered by a messenger, and I might even pay a legal messenger to sit in the office and not leave until the recipient signs for it. Because if I don't revere it, why should I want him or her to? I'm just giving you some quick nuances. There's a lot of psychology in doing strategic alliances. First thing is you got to be able to demonstrate to somebody, I'm giving you a lot of fragmented little points here, you got to be able to demonstrate to somebody that your proposition will augment, it will not supplant what they're already doing. Then you got to be able to show them how you protect them from all kinds of non-verbalized but highly important fears that will surface either specifically or abstractly. You got to show them how the money is protected, how they're going to get paid, how their client is never going to have a bad experience, how if there's any problem, it's made right, whether made right means giving their money back, giving them another one. You got to think of all the things that would be a negative or a reason I would reflect, contemplate, procrastinate, defer, or reject something. And you got to overcome that with a preemptive, sort of initial salvo, and that requires some very deep critical thinking, which is a discipline most people have never been taught to do. When I do strategic alliances, the first time I ever propose them, most people say no, even my friends. And I say, I'd say no too the first time if the tables were turned, and then I would look at this and that, and I'm on a merciless, just a tenacious, long-term sequential communication. I know that even if they say yes, the deal hasn't happened. A lot of people get real cocky. They call somebody and say, yeah, we can do it. And they think they've made a deal. That's not a deal. That's a willingness. Between getting someone, first of all, to embrace it, and I mean, it's hilarious. We get all these cockamamie emails. Ooh, man, we're doing this thing, and we want you to be, because you're a man of influence, we want you to promote it, and you can have 20% of the gross. You know, we can do deals all day long and keep 90% of the gross if I want to, or 100. Or I can show somebody they're lucky to have I mean this very, very candidly, and not just, they're lucky to have me involved. They can pay me not only all the money, but a part of the back end, and they'd be lucky to have me do it. So you got to realize that true mavens, no matter what the category, they may not be masterful in knowing the leverage they have in strategic alliances, but they don't need you, you need them. But if you come to them with weakness, they'll never work. You've got to demonstrate that you see a critical area within their business that you can contribute to, that you can enhance, that's better for them and better for their market. It could be a profit center for them, it could be a missing link, and you got to be able to explain it. And again, that's probably all I can do right now. Is that okay, Bob? Okay, next. Yes. Did they call on you, or are you just standing? No, I want to do it fairly. You're too close. I'm not trying to be rude. I want to balance everybody out. You guys, just pick. Do this for me, please. Go there, then go there. Go there, then go there. Go there. Just be real balanced.
Hi, Jay.
Hello.
I was on one of your calls with Rich and yourself.
And it changed your life, didn't it?
Absolutely.
You quit your job, you sold your business, you joined what? You joined one of our groups, and now your whole life is all going. It's just uphill, right?
Yep.
What can I do for you?
Well, one of the characters you were identifying with was Jim Cook, and you talked about counter-programming. We've been talking about mavens quite a bit. So in terms of positioning, let's say you're entering a market, be it new for you, against a maven in your industry, and there are mavens in your industry.
There's mavens in every industry.
Yeah, exactly. So how should you portray yourself and identify yourself as a character
let me start with the concept. I'm echoing here.
Okay.
Let me start with the concept of character. I think it's a little bit easier if you, instead of saying character, say, what's the character role that you want to evolve into? It's a little more buffered and more benign, so you're not trying to shocked. I don't think you can answer that until you first assess what positions, what characterizations already have been staked in the market. And staked is not necessarily a fait accompli, but it's a reference point. If somebody's already the common person, if somebody's already the counter program, if somebody's already the iconoclast, if somebody's already, the happy-go-lucky person, then you got to say, if I want to compete head-on in that space, do I bring any advantage? Any communication advantage, any positioning advantage, any knowledge advantage, any empathic advantage? Because unless you have profound advantage, even if that's your natural initial inclination or nature, you might be better off redirecting your character role. You got to first, you can't massively succeed till you're very clear and you have a lot of really advanced intelligence on what exists in the market right now. Doesn't that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
So I mean, to say I want to be you can say, I want to be the counter perspective. And I'd say, well, maybe, maybe not. Mm-hmm. Who's the counter perspective now? If you said nobody, I'd say, okay, let's look at what the perspective is that everybody else is advocating. So then let's look at what the counter perspective would look like. Let's look at how you would support it. Let's look at how you would credentialize yourself. Let's look at how you would demonstrate it. Let's look at whether or not taking that stance has endurability, whether there's enough legs and residual value in that position to go the distance, or whether it's a static position, like right now you're taking a position about the Democrats or the Republicans, and then when the election's over, you got nothing to. There's just a lot more. I'm a fanatic about nuances, that you can't just go, I'm going to go here and go there, and it's much. And again, I'm not trying to shock you, scare you, daunt you. I'm trying to liberate you, because most people who even learn the superficial elements of something like that are going to go, superficially just head on into it without thinking about these things. I don't believe anybody can go forward and maximize everything I've ever done for everybody first. And again, when I used to do it just as client work, I was never very scientifically refined. It was always intuitive. But when I started codifying the processes that I use, I realized the first thing I did was basically I would sort of scope the whole market. I would assess who's leadership, who's got the niches, even if they didn't know. A lot of people don't know how they got it. What had got them there? How do they maintain it? What is it about them? What's their persona? What's their mechanism? How strong is it? How weak is it? Where's the flaws? Until you know all of that, in my opinion, you can't settle on either a character role that you want to evolve into or a hybrid. Now, there's one other variation, and that is that it's almost like USP, and I didn't get into this, but you can adopt a USP that's inauthentic and incongruent. If you can't sustain it and fulfill it and demonstrate it and live it, and if your company and your team and your vendors can't, then it's going to be very quickly, it'll be your demise. So just because you figure out, hey, the big opportunity is to be the iconoclast. If you're the nicest, easiest going guy, it may be a character role you just can't really comfortably fulfill on for the rest of your life, or at least through a strategic period. So you might have to default to characterization number 2. It's got to work for you. Does that help or confuse you?
No, it helped a lot.
Okay. Next.
I wonder if I could ask you to do a body switching exercise. So imagine that you were one of us here and you wanted to be you up there. So if you were here and wanted to be there, could you talk about the 3 to 5 most impactful actions that you would take to be the maven in whatever market it is?
Okay, I'll try. First thing I would do is really learn what I have come to refer to as the strategy of preeminence. And I'll give you I've done it a bunch of times for people. Maybe I've done it for Rich's audience, maybe I haven't. But it starts with wanting to be seen as the most trusted advisor. It starts at really having incredible empathy, trying to understand how somebody feels, what they're trying to do, what the problems are they never have realized. It's a shift of not falling in love with your product or your company or your industry, but falling in love with the clients you serve. It has to do with developing the ability to project into the future the improvement, the protection, the enhancement in their life that will occur when your product or service or company is at work protecting them. That's the first thing. Second, my skill came from a genuine interest in human beings. I love human beings. I get tired being on stage. I've been doing it for 30 years, but I love the entrepreneurial animal. I love the hopes, the dreams. I love the qualitative ones. I don't like the ones that are just doing it for the money and not doing it for the market. And so I start with an empathic respect for the market I'm trying to serve. And I think my respect and my appreciation and my connection dramatically exceeds probably everyone else, because I'm more in love with them in the figurative sense. I am massively interested in everything and everyone outside of just the industry and the speciality. The real greatness of creativity, of innovation, of wisdom, of knowledge, of whatever you want to call it, global, CAT scan understanding, comes from extending yourself. I read everything I can that's not relevant to marketing. I engage everybody I can about anything. I'll engage the janitor, the housekeeper. I want to know as much as I can. Then I spend an enormous amount of time trying to put myself in the mind of the market. When I work for a client, with all due respect, if every one of you who have a big company came rushing up here and said, take me on, I would qualify it and say, well, maybe I will, but you got to realize, if I do, you're not my client. Your market is. You're transparent. It's not about you, it's about them. So I'm very mindful of being focused on the marketplace I'm trying to address. I think about it a lot. I communicate from the heart. If you read my communication, whether you like it or not, it's not dissimilar to how I talk, because it's real, it's genuine, it's authentic, it's not hyperbolic, although sometimes I may use some, I like I like a lot of big words that are very, just because I get fascinated intellectually. But I spend an enormous amount of time trying to think about what it would be like to be them. I spend a lot. Now the next thing I do, and I've told this to everybody, it's one of my secrets. I call it the Amazon.com school of really business, USP, empathy, knowledge. I go to Amazon.com all the time. I look up the top 25 books in as many different variations of a category as I'm working on. I look at all the titles of the bestsellers, because most of them, the books are selling not because of the editorial brilliance, but rather because of the title and the subtitle. I write all the titles and subtitles down so I can master that understanding of problems, solutions, desires. Then I go and review the reviews, the 4s and 5s and the 2s, 1s, and 0s. The 4s and 5s are unhedged, subconscious expression in passion of what people really got out of it. They want it. So in their own words, the 2s, 1s are angry, passionate, subconscious expression of what they're frustrated by, and it helps you really have an understanding of them. I also, and it's hard. My mind is wired a certain way. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've been doing this for 30 years, and 465 different industries, and hundreds of thousands of businesses, and thousands of real clients that I've worked with. So it's a little different. But I think I would learn to ask a lot of questions. When I got started, I worked all night at a job, and I was a young 18. I got married when I was 18, had 2 kids when I was 20, and the need of somebody 40, but the world didn't care, no education. And so what I did was I worked in a bunch of horribly menial and pretty wretched jobs at night to pay the rent. And during the day, I found all these, you would call them semi-mavens, prominent people in Indianapolis in different fields of endeavor. And I was such a young and fascinating enigma that almost all of them let me sit in their office for hours at a time at my own expense, watching them do business, and then every time something was done, asking them lots of questions. I think one of the fallacies, Noah, is most people believe, and I'm not saying this disrespectful to Rich or any of my contemporaries who do seminars, we do them too, we're doing one tomorrow. You think that in a couple of days or hours or one listen to a set of CDs or DVDs, you're going to transform yourself. It doesn't work that way. This is nothing more than preparation. You got to go out and do it. And most people have been inculcated by a bunch of superficial online marketers and offline marketers to believe that it's a falling off. It's like the greatest secret is there's no secret. You got to do it, and you got to keep doing it. It's like, you get up in the morning, if you don't bathe, if you don't put clothes on, if you don't eliminate, if you don't hydrate and take nutrition, sooner or later it's not going to work anymore. That's life. Does that help? Okay. Next.
Our first question is, well, I'm an aspiring maven myself. I started a lead generation company.
Do you do leads online, offline, both?
All online.
Okay.
Founded it and sold it in 4 years, and it generates over $30 million a year.
That's incredible. What market does it generate leads for?
MLM,
Okay.
network marketing.
Well, how cool.
My interest is, how did Rich persuade you to become a joint venture partner with him?
Okay. What's part two?
Part two is, what kind of joint ventures are you currently looking for?
Great questions. Those are good questions. I like those questions. The way Rich persuaded me was multifaceted. One was I believed what he was doing in your marketplace had integrity. Instead of saying, hey, you can be stark naked next to the mirror and make $1 trillion doing nothing, he said, sort of paraphrasing, guess what? It's a real business. You want to endure, you got to deal like an entrepreneur. You have to have a strategy, you got to have a system, you got to have a long-term game plan, you got to understand lifetime value. And I thought it was a very refreshing and authentic, integral and credible voice. So, and I'd known him a lot, number one. Number two, I am technophobic. I don't turn my computer on. I don't even get my own emails. I'm not saying it with pride. I'm an old dinosaur that's lucky that my brain is very viable because I can still compete pretty viably in both marketplaces. But Rich had a piece of the puzzle that I was intrigued with. Number 3, Rich has a very wonderful way of uncovering and identifying breakthroughs, but I think he's so fascinated with doing that, he doesn't always develop them out. I like to build on breakthroughs and refine them and embellish them and maximize the monetization. So there was, and it was fun. I mean, I do things, I'm not the wealthiest man in captivity, but I got there's very few questions, issues, challenges, scenarios, whether it's on or online, if you convert them to just marketing that I haven't dealt with in 30 years on a worldwide basis. I've done 150 different programs. So I like fun things, and the Maven concept was very exciting. We've done 2 or 3 other things. I like excitement where it's almost like Star Trek, where no one else could really do it. You can't fake this. You really, I mean, we may not have the most refined, synthesis of rhetoric, but we really live it. Most people can't, because I like things like that. As far as what we're doing, I'm at a point in my life, and I would urge all of you that are younger, when I was, how old are you? Okay, well, I'm 59. When I was 38, all I cared about was making millions of dollars and having Ferraris and houses and a lot of fun in a lot of ways. And as you get older, you want 3 things. You want residual income, you want asset value, you want 4 things, quality of life, and you want legacy. None of that's really relevant when you can't pay the rent. But when you get beyond that, you realize that another house, a new wife, I've been married 3 times, I got a Mercedes, I got a Porsche, I got a supercharged, tricked out Land Rover. That's not going to, I got a beach house, that's not going to change your life. But you realize that what life is all about, and I'll save you, I spent $500,000 on therapy when I was your age trying to figure out why I wasn't happy making all this money. And I got one thing out of it that's very valuable. Most people are obsessed in life with an end product. They want to make $1 million. They want to have a bigger house. They want the most beautiful wife, or they want to be the fastest growing company. If you're unlucky enough to get that for just that purpose, it's anticlimactic. The heavens aren't going to open. The angels aren't going to trumpet. You're not going to be devoid of all your problems. You're not going to have a wonderful this or wonderful that. The real key to life is the process. This conversation, what is your first name? Gil, is as good as it gets. And it's nice if it's a conversation with an intelligent and a stimulating person. But if I was talking to a maid in the hotel, that's what life's all about. So back at the ranch, what we're doing now is, my brand is very strong. I've been doing it for 30 years. We're looking to do 3 things. We want to go back to the future. I made more money, had more fun, and was far less stressed when I was vicariously the strategic marketing mastermind for other businesses. And we want to do that again, where we create new business models, marketing strategies, revenue streams, products, services for other companies, and we participate in it forever. And I can mastermind it, and they can do all the heavy lifting because there's a lot more leverage there. I was making on the equivalent of $20 million a year when I was younger than you, and then I became a speaker, and it's been very lucrative, but nothing like that, and there's no equity in it. Second, we want to pick up other people's products and programs and services and be like a republisher, where we take them to new markets and we take them in new forms and we build new front ends and back ends and we do new things for them, because I can do that all day long, and we're building up for that. That's what we're doing. We're always interested in opportunities, but everything is relative. And some of you are probably much wealthier than I am, and I laud you, but a lot of you are trying to get to a successful place. Life is about stages, and it's about passages. And when you're struggling, you want to get to a place where you're making money. But then you get to a place where you want more leverage. Then you want more purpose. Then you want more fulfillment. Then you want more strategic accomplishment. And again, it's not one size fits all. Does that help? Okay, next. Got about 7 more minutes. I can't see who's got the mic. Hi.
Hi. Our group, our table, wanted to talk about crafting the offer and what are the key elements of crafting the offer and making it valuable to the customer.
Okay. Well, the first, I think, is the ability to express powerfully that you understand something that they desire that they've never put in words. And that's not just a headline, but it's a whole integration in the offer. Then it's engaging them. See, I think most of the copy, certainly online, and offline it's a lot better. I mean, there's a lot of really cool offline stuff. There's a book that was written a couple of years ago. I think it's still around. It's called $1 Million Mailings. It's by a guy named Denny Hatch, and he publishes like 40 mailings that just lasted for 20 years and still pulled, and you can see how engaging they are, how respectful they are, how natural they are, how they demonstrate really who they are. So you want to be able to really connect, and you can't connect if you're not genuine. And if you're not writing the copy, you got to find a copywriter who's not just going to throw a bunch of hyperbolic, phrases there and a bunch of bullets and a bunch of bonuses, because I think that the market's pretty immune to that. You do want to, I think it's very important today to take people, there's a concept, and Gary Halbert and all those guys were friends of mine, and we were at a conference one time, and there was a guy who I think is still around and alive. We get older and we don't even keep track anymore, but his name was Ben Suarez. He was in Ohio, and he's very, very successful marketer. He had a concept called a greased chute, sort of like a slide. The idea is you got to take them on a journey that they can't stop, and you don't have any spikes that will catch their knickers and get them hung up going down the slide. So you got to start with an understanding, what are all the things that I would want if, first of all, I'd want you to show me that I understand something you want that no one else said. Then I would basically walk you through a scenario that demonstrated that I understood what you were going through in your life. Then I would walk you through a scenario to show you how much better off it can be. Then I would prove it to you, and I'd prove it different ways. There's lots of ways to prove it. One is by demonstrating other people you've helped, but not hyperbolically telling stories. Rich is very astutely, I always said one of my great skills is I'm a very, maybe not a great, but I'm a very good raconteur. I can tell a story from the heart with sincerity that ethically seduces people because it's so believable, it's so exciting, but not in a hyperbolic way. I think understatement is pretty powerful. I think then when you get into the proposition, you can't sell me something until I know that I want it, and I know that I believe it'll work for me, and I know that what my life could or would be like with it at work for me. And those are things people seem to forget to put in and then you got to authenticate it, because most of this is like, it's so unbelievable that it's yawnable. And you authenticate things many different ways. You can authenticate things with like when we started, this was pretty cool. When we started doing seminars, we used to do, I don't know, thousands of people at $5,000 to $25,000 a year. This is when I was this guy's age and I had more stamina. And we would run 20-page inserts in the airline magazines. You remember those, Bob? And we would have 3 solid pages of testimonials, but they weren't like AAC, Florida. It would be, what's your name? What's your last name? Diaz. Where do you live? Where? Manila? It'd be like Anton Diaz, Manila, and here we actually had daytime phone numbers they could call. We had like 30 of them because we wanted to be so credible, and we encouraged them because these people were so happy with the impact we'd made in their life. But it's a lot of it's counter programming. But then when you get into the offer, I always try to, like I said, I spend a lot of time before I create anything thinking about if I were the recipient. Even if you got me this close to saying yes, what would stop me? Well, I don't really need to. And I would address all the things that people would think, but not, they not think. A lot of people, all of us, are struggling, are thinking, but we're not thinking with clarified words. It's a weird concept. I may not be expressing it well, but it's abstract. I try to be the one person who can verbalize what people are gnawingly struggling with. So you're probably thinking, well, I can wait, or it's just another one, or I don't know that I can do this. And then I overcome it empathically, not just, cocky like, I say, hey, you know, it's a great question, and I think it's wonderful, but here's why I think you can't. And here's why you got to try it. And it's very heartfelt. Does that make sense? And then, of course, you take away the risk, but you make it authentic. If I say to you, I'll give you an example. This is where a lot of people screw up. And I'm going to use a weird example. It's probably not accurate because it may be violating FDA law when I use this example. So I'm just giving it as a reference, not saying it's accurate. If I were selling supplements, and I said, was it Anton? I said, Anton, you can buy these with a 30-day guarantee. That's one thing. If I say, Anton, if you buy these supplements from me, I won't even consider your purchase committed and binding on your part until you've tried it for not 30 but 45 days. That's a month and a half supply. And if you can't honestly tell me, if we talked within that time or before, that you're sleeping like a baby maybe for the first time, that you have 40 to 80% more energy, that your focus is improved, that people are commenting you look younger, you look more vital, they're asking you if you've lost weight, if you're married, your wife is enjoying you, your sex life is improved. If you can't say at least those things, I don't deserve to keep your money. That's a little stronger than 30-day money-back guarantee, isn't it? Now, you do have, a lot of people are afraid of refunds. Refunds, if you deal with authenticity and integrity, refunds are fine because it means you've reached a broader market of people who trust you, and everybody can't possibly be your buyer. And we've even one time we had a wonderful promotion, we called it Refunder's Revenge. We got all the people that ever refunded, and we sent them an offer that was irresistible. Just because somebody doesn't buy one thing, again, online, I think the quality of buyers is less than offline. So you've got a little different ethos and value judgment, but even refunders can be turned into great long-term buyers if you have the right strategy. Speaking of which, most people in business, particularly people online focused, tend to be very tactical. They're not very strategic. The moment you change strategy, everything changes in your life. Your business gets infinitely easier, far more profitable, and far more enduring. Is that answer okay? Okay, next, I'll do one more and then I'm going to stop. Who's the last questioner? The advocate of the market. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Jay, and thank you for all your insight. It is extremely valuable to our table and whatnot.
Well, thank you.
I think you've answered the questions for the table. I have one question for you personally.
Go ahead.
I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm in a business that's very controversial right now, which is global warming.
Okay. And what is it you do in that field?
We convert environmental liabilities into money.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Through what process?
We have a patented process.
Okay.
And ultimately, it's to understand how to help the country guide the company which feeds the community. And I guess it's to have those aligned to where they just get it because we do it for free.
What's the question?
The question is how do you do that?
Well, how do you do it right now?
Currently, it's a very slow process through the companies, which is more of a technical solution that's drug out forever.
Now, you do it for free for them, but you end up monetizing it somehow with what you get out of it?
Yes, the
okay.
carbon credits.
Yeah, okay. Well, I would say to you, the first thing is to start with the incredulity and turn that into a positioning, wouldn't you think? I've always, whenever something was unbelievable or hard to fathom, rather than averting it, I always turned that it's hard to believe that somebody could do all this and not even charge you a dime and have a success rate that's 100%, but here's the facts, and try to turn something of that focus where you take the negative and you turn it into the whole focal thrust of the provocative premise. It makes for great PR, and just get all the industries that would be the highest, most viable and probable initial prospects to do it. Or the other way is, if it's very lucrative on the back end for you, find a bunch of influential people, either by name or by position and put them on your board of advisors and make them non-liability based, but put a pool of money into, like a profit, into a fund that pays those advisors for their influence and just their prestige. Those are the quickest answers I can give you. You're welcome. Okay, let's do one more that's more of an advocacy for the whole group, and then I'll feel morally fulfilled and I'll leave.
Jay, my name is Law from Germany.
Hi.
Okay. And the question would be, you get $50,000 an hour. How does somebody have lunch with you in this room for an hour?
I don't get 50, it's 50 a day.
50 a day, okay.
But I will take 50 an hour if you want to.
No, that's okay. Okay. How does somebody in this room have lunch with you for an hour and pick your brain? Like you did mentoring when you were mentoring younger.
You know, I mean, in all honesty, that's not the easiest thing. Everybody and their brother will say, hey, let me take you to dinner. It's like, unless you're going to take me to a $20,000 dinner, it's not a great deal, because nobody wants to go to dinner with me and just say, hey, did you watch the Laker game? So I would say to you, and I don't even do single hours anymore. I only do a minimum of like 4, just because we don't do a lot of, you know, when I first started doing fee-based consulting, it was 30 years ago, and it was like $2,000 an hour, when now is a lot of money. And I did it as a contrast to get people to want to work with me long-term on a contingency, because there was far more money and it wasn't time denominated. I would say to you, with all due respect, if you want to engage me, you probably have to buy 4 hours of time, because I'm not, it's a different time in my life. We do occasionally, like we have in our office, a young man who's 19, and he's a sort of a little a project for us, and we're trying to take somebody whose destiny wasn't exactly, you know, going up, and see if we can transform him. But I've done an extraordinary amount of pro bono. I've done an extraordinary amount of contribution. I've done a lot of free gifting, and I'm pretty not rude or callous, but I don't have a lot of capacity anymore to do it. But in my life, I've influenced a lot of people. You know, for years, if somebody would write us with a hard luck story, I'd send them a couple of $100 worth of materials to invest in their future. I've sort of done my good deeds, and now I'm not at all trying to be callous, but I'd say it'll probably cost you 20 grand if you want to have lunch, but I'll treat. One more. I want one that'll be a little bit, no, I've got to be some bad. Pick one in the backish, and then I got to go. My mother's calling.
Jay, thank you so much. My name is Kevin, and the question of our group is, if you want to stand out in your market, what are 1, 2, 3 things that across markets, all markets, are universal for that person who does stand out, who is the maven?
Well, one is, I think you got to be able to see things no one else sees, and be able to express and articulate them in some form, whether it's articles, whether it's interviews, whether it's a book, whether it's, you know. Number 2, you really have to have I mean, everyone can say, yeah, I care about my market, but you really have to care at such a seminal level that you care about their outcome, not just, and you got to focus on that. And 3, I think you got to constantly commit yourself. I mean, if you look at the greatest leaders in entrepreneurial sectors, they are normally the entrepreneurs and the businesses who engineer the maximum quantity, quality, and consistency of breakthroughs in marketing, strategy, innovation, and management. And innovation is a misnomer. It can be technological, but it doesn't have to be. It can be just bringing greater value, benefit, advantage to the market that they perceive and desire. Management isn't just managing people, it's managing opportunity cost, managing all kinds of things. We believe very ardently in creative collaboration. Nobody in this room has the wherewithal to understand or master 1/10 of all the knowledge, all the expertise, all the specialization out there. You need mentors, you need mastermind groups, you need brain trusts. That's about all I can say. Well, we came, we addressed questions. Hopefully it's been a pleasant hour and a half. I have enjoyed it, and I hope I've made some meaningful contribution. I hope to see some of you in our program tomorrow and the next days, and I hope all of you got a lot out of Rich's program. Thank you.